Turn on the news, and you enter a different reality. They will tell you that the crisis is averted. They will point to the green arrows on the screen. They will tell you that GDP is growing at a healthy pace, that unemployment is at historic lows, that the S&P 500 is breaking records every single week. They will use words like resilient, robust, and the favorite buzzword of the year, soft landing. According to the official narrative, the economy is booming. But then, you turn off the TV, you get in your car, you go to the grocery store, you stand in the aisle holding a carton of eggs or a package of ground beef, and you freeze. You look at the price tag, and for a split second, you think it's a mistake. You remember what this cost 3 years ago. You look around, and you see other people making the same calculation, putting items back on the shelf. You go to the gas pump, and you watch the dollars tick up faster than the gallons. You open your rent bill or your mortgage statement, and you feel a physical weight in your chest, a gnawing, sinking feeling that something is terribly wrong. There is a glitch in the matrix, a massive, undeniable disconnect between the economy on the screen, the economy of politicians and bankers, and the economy of your daily life. For decades, earning $100,000 a year was the golden ticket. It was the statistical definition of the American dream. It meant a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, a family vacation every summer, and a healthy savings account. It was the finish line. Today, in major cities like New York, Los Angeles, or Miami, $100,000 isn't rich. It isn't even comfortable. It is arguably lower middle class. It is living paycheck to paycheck, one emergency away from disaster. We are told we aren't in a recession, and technically, by the old textbook definition, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, we aren't. But what if the definition is wrong? What if the ruler we use to measure reality is broken? We are living through something much more insidious than a crash. A crash is fast, it's loud, you can see it. What we are experiencing is a slow-motion suffocation. A crisis that doesn't show up in the GDP but shows up at your dinner table. We are not in a recession. We are in a silent depression. And the scariest part isn't that the system is broken, it's that for the people at the top, it's working exactly as designed. This is the money system. Today we are going to look at why the math no longer adds up and why you feel poorer even as the numbers say you are getting richer. To understand this gaslighting, we have to go back to the source. We have to talk about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. This is the number the Federal Reserve and the government use to tell you what inflation is. When they say inflation is cooling to 3%, they are basing it on this basket of goods. But here is the secret they don't headline. The formula for this number has been changed repeatedly. Over the last 40 years, then economists have tweaked, adjusted, and massaged the math to make inflation look lower than it actually is. One of their favorite tricks is called substitution bias. The logic goes like this. The government assumes that if the price of steak goes up, you are not going to keep buying steak. You are going to switch to hamburger. So when they calculate inflation, they stop tracking the expensive steak and start tracking the cheaper hamburger. If the hamburger gets too expensive, they assume you'll switch to chicken. If chicken skyrockets, maybe you'll switch to soy paste. According to the official math, your cost of living didn't go up. You just chose a cheaper lifestyle. The index doesn't measure the cost of maintaining your standard of living. It measures the cost of survival. They aren't measuring the price of the life you had. They are measuring the price of the downgraded life you are forced to live. But it gets worse. They also use something called hedonics. This is where they adjust prices based on quality. Let's say a new iPhone costs $1,000 just like the old one, but the camera is twice as good. The government might say that the price of the phone effectively went down by 50% because you got twice as much technology for the same money. That sounds logical for phones, but they apply this logic everywhere. If a car is safer today than it was in 1990, they say the real price is lower, even if the sticker price has tripled. But here is the problem. You cannot eat megapixels. You cannot pay your rent with airbags. You pay with cash. And in cash terms, everything is exploding. If we calculated inflation today using the same methods we used in 1980, before all these accounting tricks were invented, current inflation wouldn't be 3%. It would be closer to double digits. And by that metric, we have been in a deep recession for years. This leads us to the first layer of the silent depression, the bifurcated economy. Have you noticed what has become cheap? Televisions, toys, digital subscriptions, fast fashion, the things that distract you, the things that keep you entertained on the couch. Now look at what has become expensive: education, healthcare, childcare, insurance, and most importantly, a place to sleep. The pillars of a stable life, the things you need to build a future, have skyrocketed in price, far outpacing official inflation. But the gadgets you use to forget about your problems have gotten cheaper. This isn't an accident. It is the bread and circuses of the modern age. Let's look at the raw numbers. No adjustments, no hedonic filtering. Just cold, hard reality. In 1930, during the absolute depths of the Great Depression, the average American income was around $1,300. The average home cost $3,900. Do the math. A house cost roughly 3 times the annual salary. Think about that. In the worst economic crisis in history, a single worker, a carpenter, a factory hand, could buy a home for a family of 4 by saving for just 3 to 4 years. One income was enough. Now, fast forward to today. The median household income is around $75,000. The median home price, over $420,000. And in the cities where the actual jobs are, that number is closer to $1 million. The ratio has jumped from 3x to 7x, 8x, or even 10x. This is the 2-income trap. In the 1950s, a family could thrive on one salary. Today, even with 2 partners working full-time jobs, owning a home feels like a distant fantasy. We have doubled the labor force, doubled the hours worked per household, and yet we have half the purchasing power. So, when the older generation calls the younger generation lazy or says they spend too much on avocado toast and lattes, they are missing the mathematical reality. You could cut out every coffee, every Netflix subscription, and every vacation, and you would still not be able to afford the house your grandparents bought on a factory wage. This is why you feel poor. It's not because of your spending habits, it's because the fundamental contract of capitalism, that hard work leads to a better life, has been broken. The ladder hasn't just been pulled up, it's been set on fire. And the most terrifying part? This isn't happening because of a failure of production. Since 1971, American productivity has skyrocketed. We are working harder, faster, and more efficiently than any generation in human history. We have email, AI, automation, logistics networks that move goods at the speed of light. We generate more wealth per hour than our ancestors could dream of. But look at the charts. Where did that wealth go? It didn't go to wages. Adjusted for real inflation, the average worker's purchasing power hasn't budged in 50 years. The pie got bigger, but your slice stayed the same size. Actually, if you account for the cost of housing, healthcare, and education, your slice got smaller. So when economists say the consumer is strong, they are lying with statistics. The consumer isn't strong. The consumer is desperate. The consumer is borrowing, and that brings us to the darkest mechanism of the silent depression. The illusion of wealth. If wages haven't gone up, how does the world look so rich? How are the malls full and the airports packed? The answer is simple. We aren't paying with money anymore. We are paying with our future. Credit card debt in the United States has smashed through the $1.14 trillion ceiling. It is an all-time high, a number so large it is difficult to comprehend. But the raw number isn't the terrifying part. The terrifying part is why people are borrowing. In previous decades, spikes in consumer debt usually correlated with consumer confidence. People borrowed money to renovate their kitchens, to start businesses, or to take dream vacations because they were confident they could pay it back. Look at the data today. That dynamic has inverted. People aren't borrowing to thrive. They are borrowing to survive. Delinquency rates on credit cards and auto loans are rising at the fastest pace since the 2008 financial crisis. We are seeing a massive surge in the use of buy now, pay later services. Not for luxury handbags or televisions, but for groceries, for fast food, for basic necessities. When you have to split the cost of a sandwich into 4 interest-free payments, the economy is not strong. It is on life support. This creates what we call the credit camouflage. In the 1930s, poverty was visceral. It was visible. You wore tattered clothes because you couldn't afford new ones. You stood in a bread line because you had no food. If you were poor, you looked poor. And because you looked poor and your neighbor looked poor, there was a shared reality. In the 2020s, poverty is invisible. It is hidden behind a digital veil. You drive a leased SUV that costs $800 a month. You wear designer clothes bought on credit. You post photos of your $20 cocktails on Instagram. On the surface, the American consumer looks wealthier than ever. We are projecting an image of success while drowning in the background. Credit is the financial painkiller of the middle class. It masks the injury so you can keep walking, keep working, and keep consuming. But the wound is getting infected, and with interest rates hitting 20-year highs, the painkiller is wearing off. The bills are coming due, and the APR is no longer 3%. It's 25%, 29%, sometimes higher. This leads to a strange and nihilistic phenomenon that economists have started calling doom spending. You might ask, if people are so broke, why are malls still packed? Why are Taylor Swift concerts sold out? Why are airports full? The answer is dark. It's because the traditional goals of financial responsibility, saving for a house, saving for retirement, feel mathematically impossible for millions of people. If you do the math and realize that saving $500 a month will never, ever get you a down payment on $1 million starter home, something snaps in the human psyche. You stop saving. You give up on the future because the future feels canceled. You think, I'll never own a home, so I might as well enjoy this latte. I might as well take this trip. It is consumption-driven, not by optimism, but by hopelessness. It is the spending habits of a generation that has realized the game is rigged, so they have decided to stop playing by the rules and just enjoy the decline. And this brings us to the heart of the silent depression, the fundamental difference between what happened in 1930 and what is happening now. It isn't just about money, it is about the social fabric. The Great Depression was a collective trauma. It was loud, it was public. When the banks failed, everyone knew who to blame. They blamed the bankers. They blamed the system. There were protests. There were Hoovervilles, shantytowns built in public parks. There was a sense of shared struggle. Neighbors helped neighbors. The suffering was externalized. The silent depression is solitary. It is internalized. Because the stock market is at all-time highs, because the GDP is positive, because the media keeps shouting that the economy is robust. You don't blame the system, you blame yourself. You look at your phone, and you see a curated feed of success. You see influencers buying cars, your friends getting promoted, people traveling the world. You think, if the economy is good, why am I struggling? I must be the failure. I didn't hustle enough. I didn't manifest enough. I bought too much avocado toast. The system gaslights you into believing that your structural poverty is a personal character flaw. This isolation is dangerous. In the 1930s, misery loved company, and company created political power. In the 2020s, misery scrolls TikTok alone in a dark room at 2 a.m. The Great Depression was a tragedy of the market. The silent depression is a tragedy of the mind. It isolates you, it shames you, it keeps you quiet. And a quiet, exhausted, debt-ridden population is very easy to rule. But where does this road end? If the ladder to the middle class is broken, and wages are stagnant, and debt is the only way to float, what is the final destination of this economy? It isn't capitalism as we were taught in school. It is something older, something darker. If you cannot afford to buy a home, you must rent. If you cannot afford to buy a car, you must lease. If you cannot afford to buy software, you must subscribe. We are transitioning into the subscription economy, or as historians who study the cycles of empires might call it, Neo-Feudalism. In the Middle Ages, the vast majority of people, serfs, owned nothing. They lived on land owned by a lord, they worked the fields, kept enough to survive, and gave the rest to the owner in exchange for being allowed to stay. They owned no assets, they had no equity. They existed to service the capital of the ruling class. Look at the housing market today. This is not a conspiracy, it is a business model. Corporate giants like BlackRock, Vanguard, and massive private equity firms are buying up single-family neighborhoods across America. They are outbidding regular families with all-cash offers. Why? Because they don't want to sell those houses back to you, they want to rent them to you forever. They have done the math. They know that a generation of forever renters is more profitable than a generation of homeowners. A homeowner pays off their mortgage and eventually becomes free. A renter pays until the day they die. This is the great reset of the American dream, the shift from an ownership society, where the goal was to build personal equity, to a usership society, where you own nothing and pay for access to everything. You work a job you don't control to pay rent for an apartment you don't own, to a corporation that pays almost no taxes using credit cards that charge you 25% interest. The technology has changed. The dynamic has not. You are not building wealth. You are servicing someone else's capital. So why does $100,000 feel like $50,000? Because our money is broken, because the metrics are manipulated, and because the cost of the American dream has been inflated away from the people who were supposed to live it. We are not in a recession. A recession implies a cycle, a dip that will bounce back. What we are experiencing is a structural shift, a lowering of the standard of living for the majority masked by debt and digital distractions. But the first step to solving a problem is admitting it exists. Turn off the news. Put down the credit card. Look at the reality. The silent depression ends the moment we start talking about it. The system depends on your silence. Don't give it to them.